house around the house. In this video I'm going to show you how to cut perfect wood plugs like this, which can be used to cover up screw heads in your woodworking projects. Like this. You'd normally need a pillar drill to do this successfully, but I'm going to show you how to make this jig in order to make professional plugs using only a cordless drill. For this task you'll need some plug cutters and countersinks. These are an Erbauer set which I bought from Screwfix for a tenner. So if we pretend this is a project and we need to screw this piece of wood to the piece of wood below, but we want to hide the screw head, then we need to make a countersink. So I'll take a countersink tool and attach it to the drill. For the purpose of this video, I'm going to show you a larger countersunk hole as well. So now you can see two nice countersunk holes with two pilot holes through the middle. And typically we would take a screw, place it through these holes and drive them into the piece of wood behind. Now you can see we're left with the screw head inside the countersunk hole, so we need to cover that with a wood plug. Now I'll show you how to make the jig, how to cut the plug and how to fit and finish the plug. Trying to use the plug cutter freehand, this is usually what happens. You'll find your drill moves all over the place. So the only way to do this is by keeping your drill in one position. And this is why usually a pillar drill is the only way to do it. However, it is possible with a cordless drill using a simple jig. So to make my jig, I'm just using two pieces of wood. This is an old scrap bit of chipboard, and I've got a scrap bit of pine here. Now you'll see by there and there, I've just drawn a line at 90 degrees, and I'm just going to cut that on the chop saw, just so I got a nice, neat, small piece of wood. And I've marked up the bit of pine to cut to exactly the same length. So I'll cut that now on the chop saw. Using my Makita cordless drill, I'm going to drill a few pilot holes through this piece of wood here, and then we can put some screws through this and into the pine piece behind. Now a handy little tip is that when you're drilling pilot holes through wood, is to always put a scrap piece of wood below. If you don't, you're going to go through the piece of wood and damage your workbench. Now you need to work out the diameter of the plug cutters in your kit, and you want to measure it from the far outside edge to the other far outside edge. I've found for my small plug cutter, it's a 14mm drill bit, and for my large plug cutter, a 17mm drill bit. Now if you take the plug cutters, they fit nicely inside the two holes. So going back to the piece of pine, we're going to place this piece of chipboard on top. I'm going to drive some screws through there and secure the jig all together. I'll just start the screws off with this on the bench. Now place this on top of the pine and drive the screws through. So now you can see we've got a very simple jig. We can hook that back over the piece of wood we're working with. So taking this piece for example, we can hook this over the back of a flat edge like that, hold that down in place, and we can use this as a guide to put our plug cutter through. Taking the smaller of our plug cutters, I'm going to now show you how to create a plug out of this piece of pine. You can then just slide that along and do another one. And again. And again. You can see we've actually lost one plug up inside the cutter, so I'll just pop that out now. But you see the general idea and how this jig removes the need for a pillar drill. Then if you get yourself a small drill bit or a small chisel, you can just pop that in there and you can prise your plug out like that. So again, push your drill down as far as you can, just gently pull like that, and there you have another plug. The length and the quality of each plug depends on how deep you cut it and how accurate you cut it. To get the best results, just ensure that your cutter is clean before cutting each plug. And you can see some of them break off at the bottom, but occasionally you get a really nice long plug like that as long as you drive the cutter down deep enough. Now I'm going to have a go with the larger cutter. And there you have another 3 really good plugs. So back to the countersunk holes and screw heads. Now we're going to take the plugs that we've cut and fit them into these holes. Let's get a large plug, place it into the hole and twist it round. Then we'll do the same with a small plug. Then I'll give it a helping hand with a hammer. When you do this, you can obviously add wood glue if you want to make them more secure. And to cut these down, you can either chisel them down gently, or what I prefer to do is use a saw blade on its side just to take them down most of the way, and then I finish it off with a chisel or sandpaper. A handy little tip so you don't mark your woodwork while you're using a saw blade is to take like a thin sheet of plastic, metal or a bit of card, place it there, and then when you're cutting just put your blade over the top like that. And that protects this piece of wood from the saw blade. I've just put my gloves on just in case the blade slips. I don't want to cut my hands. There's 1 and 2. So by doing this, you've taken the majority of the plug down, and now we can use a chisel or some sandpaper just to finish it off. Again, be careful using a chisel, you don't want to mark your woodwork, but if you're careful, it'll be absolutely fine. Then just finish off with your sandpaper. And there you have your 2 flush plugs. Now one thing to note here is whether you want your plugs to stand out as a feature or whether you're trying to blend them in with a piece of wood. Now if you want to blend them in with a piece of wood, there's 2 things I'd suggest. The first thing is to put the grain in the same direction as the piece of wood, and the second thing is to take your plugs from the same cut of wood that you're using for your project. This way they're going to be the same colour, and it's less likely that this is going to stand out when you've stained it up. If you want your plugs to intentionally contrast with a piece of wood and make a nice feature out of it, then I'd suggest turning the grain around so that it's not in line with the grain on the piece of wood, and even take your plugs from a separate piece of wood that's a slightly different colour. And here's an example of contrasting wood plugs in a coat rail that I made. So there you go, make yourself a simple jig like this, it'll cost you peanuts, you can make perfect plugs using your cordless drill, and no need to splash out on a pillar drill. For more DIY, how-to, household tips and product review, please watch my other videos and don't forget to subscribe. I've been Pouse Around the House. Ta-ta, farewell.